Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you've all enjoyed the exhibition, enjoyed lunch, and are ready to go this afternoon. So just to make sure you're all in the right session, this is Games and Learning with Pete Jenkins. If anyone is in the wrong room, now is your time to make your exit. We've got a full audience, so I'm really looking forward to this. So gamification is something we've been talking about for a few years at this conference, at other conferences. I think there's a lot of questions about whether we're kind of doing it right, if we're really getting the best from it. Questions like how do we know the difference between games and gamification? And we're really lucky today because Pete has got a long list of credentials. So he's founder of Gamification Plus Limited, which provides consultancy and training on gamification. He's entrepreneur in residence at Brighton Business School. He runs the first UK undergraduate course on gamification for business. Chair of GamFed, and this week has been named #1 gamification guru in the world in Gamification Guru's Power 100. So we have got someone who really, really knows what he's talking about. One thing that I just want to point out is that Pete is talking about gamification in other industries and what we, in learning, can kind of draw from that. So just wanted to make sure you're not in the wrong place if you start seeing examples from things other than learning, but all still really relevant to us, and hopefully we'll answer some of those questions that I mentioned. So over to you, Pete.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can see me all right. A short while ago, one of my clients contacted me in a bit of a panic, and it's because their gamification project was working too well. So more about that in a bit. Okay. As far back as I can remember, I've always craved feedback and recognition for whatever I'm doing. When I was young, I got lots of feedback from my teachers, from my parents, from my games I was playing. And I'm pretty sure it was while I was at school that I got addicted to feedback and recognition. In fact, I get pretty demotivated if I don't get it. Indeed, this craving for feedback has skewed my choices in life. I'll take on projects and causes for the recognition and the cool job titles, rather than for the money, much to my wife Jackie's ongoing despair. Gamification Plus, as Stephanie mentioned, is a gamification consultancy. We do strategy and training, particularly on gamification and how to use it. GamFed is the international body for gamification. We're all about spreading best practices across the industry of gamification because it's such a new and nascent industry. I think it needs that help. So conferences and things where we share ideas and case studies are really, really important to us, and we like to support those. And I lecture in entrepreneurship and gamification at the University of Brighton. In fact, we've also now got our first postgraduate module coming up in April, which would be cool. All from a business perspective, applying gamification to business in lots of different ways. That's a lot, but about 80% of my time is actually spent on commercial projects. Okay. My work background for the years previous to getting into gamification was in IT, and particularly in selling, customizing, and supporting CRMs, or customer relationship management systems, which should help a business look after their prospects and their customers and provide great customer service and help them win repeat business. Now, all the CRMs I've worked with are big systems. They're packed full of useful features, and all those features are what clients want to use in their businesses. And I practiced what I preached, and we use the biggest and best internally in our company. But what actually happened to me and my team, and I noticed sometimes even happened faster to our clients, was that over time, less and less of those features got used. And there's a number of reasons for this. But it often boiled down to the systems being too complicated to use, which meant the majority of staff weren't comfortable using them. And in fact, maybe they were even scared of using them, scared of making mistakes or breaking it. Okay. And also, it probably meant that the systems weren't really telling them what benefits they were getting out of using it. What was the point in them using it? And I began to feel that there was something definitely lacking in all these CRM systems, and we worked with multiple. So I went looking for a way to fix it. I thought it would be better user design or something like that. And that's when I came across the term gamification and started taking Kevin Wareback's Coursera course on gamification, which 60,000 people started and 6,000 finished that one. So it's pretty popular, even 3 years ago. As soon as I started the course, I immediately started comparing the video games I've been playing, which were big and complicated, and yet still fun to use, to the CRMs I was using, which were big and complicated and not fun to use. And I thought, if I can gamify a CRM, then that's the answer. That's definitely got to be the answer. I can't think of a better way. And I've been living and breathing gamification ever since. So today, I'm really going to tell you and show you what gamification is, what it's about, how it's being used already, and hopefully inspire you with more ways to use it in learning. And I'm going to start you off with a question, actually. What do you do when your routine down at the gym has just got a bit too boring and you're losing the will to exercise? Well, here's what one man does.
Oh, the Shuttlebay has such teeth there, and it shows them pearly white. Just a jackknife has old Maggie, babe, and it keeps it out of sight. You know when that shark bites with his teeth, babe, scarlet billows start to spread. Fancy gloves, though.
I know you're all going to be doing that down the gym when you get back to your hotels later. Is that right? Yeah. Now, the most commonly accepted definition of gamification is from Kevin Wehrback, who ran that MOOC I was talking about, which is the use of game mechanics in non-gaming contexts. But I prefer the second definition, which is also by him, which he came up with later, which is the process of making activities more game-like. And I think that's much more of a doing type phrase, which is what games are about. You do them, you play them. They're very active. And I think you should look at gamification as being made up of theories that already exist, from neuroscience, from motivational psychology, behavioral economics, and user experience design. But what it does give us is a really practical framework for applying that knowledge really quickly and actually quite easily to all sorts of situations and processes. What about the future for gamification? So Australian games researcher Marigo Raftopoulos has analysed over 200 gamification case studies across the world. In fact, she told me that she spent 1.3 million minutes researching the subject, which I think is probably too much time. But the interesting thing for me that came out of it was that corporates don't just see gamification as what we define gamification as, but they're starting to make it seem much more inclusive, including things that already existed pre-gamification. So now when they start asking about gamification, we are actually being asked about gamification, serious games, playful experiences, all of that sort of thing. And I think that means we're just going to be hearing more about it and not less in the future. Time for some statistics. These are going to highlight why we want to learn from games. Okay? And to make it fun, we're going to have a little quiz. Each of you has got an app on your chair for voting. When you want to use it, just put your arm up like this. Thanks. So, the first question is, have any of you heard of the computer game Destiny? It was launched before Christmas the year before last. Anyone? Okay, so we've got a few. All right. So how much do you think the company Activision, who made it, spent developing and launching the game Destiny? Was it 31 million? Who thinks that? Okay. Was it 105 million pounds? Was it 310 million pounds? Okay, so most of you are going for the last answer, which is indeed the correct answer. And what's really interesting there is, considering how few of you had heard of it, is that's more money than was spent on the most expensive film ever made yet, which was Avatar. Okay? So how much did Destiny make in sales just on the first day? Who thinks they made 50 million pounds? Oh, we got one. Excellent. Who thinks they made 500 million pounds? Okay, a few more. Who thinks they made 900 million pounds? You think you got my pattern. It's 500 million. So they made the money back and more in the first day. They've made a lot more since as well. So they've worked out that it's big industry. There's a lot to be learned from it. What about some stats? What percentage of video game players in the UK are female? Now, who thinks it's 27%? Okay, a few. Who thinks it's 41%? A lot more. And who thinks it's 52%? Oh, it's pretty even between the last two. Oh. And the answer is actually 52%. And that changed in 2014. It went from 47% up to 52%. And I've got a sneaky feeling it was the game Candy Crush that had something to do with that. Yes. And last little question. So in 2014, which is the last year I've got stats for this, how many video game players were there worldwide? Who thinks 1.78 billion? Oh, no one. 2.55 billion? Okay, and 2.98 billion. Completely wrong. It's 1.78 billion. It's still a lot. In fact, what's interesting about this fact is 78% of those will have also played a video game on a mobile phone or a smartphone. And so that's a really good place to interact with people. Okay. Next, I'd like to highlight a little understood fact about games. I think this is particularly important for when we're thinking about learning as well. And that's actually that, in fact, this is a quote from Bernard Suits. I've misput it. Games give us unnecessary obstacles that we volunteer to tackle. And for instance, it's easy to walk along a pavement, but put some markings on it, turn it into hopscotch, and you've made it much more difficult. In fact, I still don't understand how to do it. I probably wouldn't be able to get there. Or running's pretty simple, but put some markings on a pitch, put some rules around it, gamify running, you've got football. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm doing another talk later. I was expecting a different slide. Come next. Okay. So this basically means that gamifying a process is probably not going to make it easier for your user or learner. It's going to make it harder. Okay, so that I think is important to keep in mind. And I think it's worth spending a little bit of time understanding how games are fun, how they motivate us. And one of my preferred ways to look at this is through games researcher Nicole Lazzaro's 4 Keys to Fun. She looked at what people got from playing games and basically was able to boil it down to just 4 key points. And she's named them hard fun, easy fun, people fun, and serious fun. Now, some of those don't actually sound that much fun, do they? But let's take a look at each of them in turn. Now, hard fun is about the challenges. It's made up of things like puzzles, Sudoku, crosswords, problem solving. That's what led me into a career in IT originally, with solving problems. And there's an Italian word called fiero, which I'm going to read out it's that it describes the specific and intense emotion of accomplishment when overcoming a great obstacle. Yeah? I think that really explains what you get out of hard fun. It's very relevant to those feelings. And players who enjoy hard fun say they like playing to see how good they really are, playing to beat the game, having multiple objectives, and that it requires strategy rather than luck. Okay. Next up, easy fun. Now think of this really as curiosity. That's the main thing in easy fun. Who's heard of Minecraft or played Lego? Surely you've all played Lego. Yeah, Minecraft can be played 2 main ways. One is about building and creating, just like in Lego, but the other is it's called Explorer mode. It's about exploring that world. And in fact, there's a great video online about the Minecraft suicide booth. This really exemplifies curiosity, in my opinion. Listen to this, and you can hear the joy in the narrator's voice as he explores and is surprised and delighted by the various ways his character dies. Are we gonna...
To introduce to you the suicide booth. It only costs 25 cents, or whatever your currency is. It's not too bad, right? It's cheap, it's odorless, and reliable. Perfect. So right, let's go straight into this giant machine and see what's going down. Surprise me. Oh my goodness. Quick and painless. We've got firing squad, black magic. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of crazy stuff in here. Slow and horrible, cactus, yeah. Incineration, yeah. Oh geez, right. Oh my goodness, face the horde. Loads of different armies. Oh man, right, let's choose one. Let's go for a clutch of chicken jockeys. I'm guessing we need to go down here and see what happens, shall we? I'm nervous. I'm nervous. Oh, there they are. Oh, jeez. Ah! Oh, no. No, punch them, punch them, punch them, punch them. Oh, man, I'm surviving pretty well. Look at these guys. They just keep on coming in. I don't think I've ever seen a chicken jockey in Minecraft before. I know of them, but oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. They're not friendly. They're not friendly at all. Oh, that was epic. I love that. Oh, man, let's go again. Let's go again. And the best 25 cents I've ever spent.
In fact, I can tell you the full video is over 9 minutes long, and it's characterized in an awful lot of different ways. Yeah? Obviously, that curiosity is valued more than his character's life, even though he's obviously built it up over time. Now, players that enjoy easy fun say they like exploring new worlds with intriguing people. They like excitement and adventure. They like wanting to figure it out. And they like seeing what happens in the story. Now, that's the reason we want to finish the books we read and watch films to the end as well. Our third key to fun is people fun. Often the first question I'm asked in gamification is actually, is it all about competition? And actually, most people aren't competitive that much of the time, but they are really motivated by doing things together socially. In fact, there's some great information from Cancer Research UK on this. Every January, they run Triathlon, where you quit drinking for the month of January. And seeing as how we're just at the start of February, I'm going to ask, did anyone do the Triathlon challenge? 1, 2. Did you succeed? Well done. Very good. Excellent. I didn't do it. In fact, overheard by my wife a couple of weeks ago at our child's nursery, was a parent explained to the nursery worker their child was really excited because they got to see Daddy every evening this month because it was dry January and he wouldn't be in the pub. How terrible is that? She couldn't believe it. Now, a couple of years ago, they had a gamified way into the Triathlon Challenge. One way was not gamified. The other was gamified. It was very simple gamification. It was little badges they could share, progress you could share on social media, showing you how you were getting on towards your goal, that sort of thing. Pretty simple stuff tied into just giving, where they were tracking the stats. And the interesting bit, well, the first interesting result was that people who entered the challenge the gamified way raised 40% more per person on average, just from that little extra bit of feedback and things. But from the people fun point of view, the really interesting bit is those who entered the challenge in teams raised 100% more per person. 100% more. And I think that also probably meant that more people took part as well, because mostly you don't want to miss out on the social element within an office or a department or whatever the team is. Such powerful results that I recommend you always try and build in some sort of social or team aspect into any gamification project. And it could be something as simple as a team of two, like a mentor and a mentee. That can be very motivating to both parties. In fact, there was an interesting talk yesterday where they were talking about reverse menteeing as well, which I thought was a good idea. And players whose enjoyment comes from interacting with other people say that it's the people that are addictive and not the game, that they want an excuse to invite their friends over, that they don't enjoy the games, but actually it's fun to spend time with their friends, or even that they don't play, but it's fun to watch. Fun to watch? Have you ever stood behind someone and watched them play a video game? Yeah. Did you enjoy that? Yeah. In fact, the research shows if you're watching someone play a game, you're actually still getting about 50% the amount of enjoyment that the person playing the game is getting. Which is just amazing. Now, watching people play games is now so popular, it's got its own term, esports. Yeah. In 2014, 71 million people watched competitive gaming, video gaming online worldwide. That's more people than watch the big US sporting events. It's gone up 8-fold in the last 4 years. And in fact, here's a telling statistic. Of the top 10 YouTube channels on YouTube, 5 of them are gaming related. And then YouTube say that gaming videos bring in 3.5 billion views of videos a month. Okay. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth would you want to watch other people play video games? And I'm not a hardcore gamer myself, so I'm pretty intrigued and fascinated by this phenomenon as well. And it seems that the majority of people watching esports are players themselves and want to learn new moves and improve their own game. I think we can learn from this. It may even be more exciting than we think at first glance. I'm going to show you a clip from the opening ceremony of the League of Legends Esports World Championships that just ran in October last year. Anyone heard of the game League of Legends? I'm going to be saying that all day. League of Legends. Okay.
point. Will this really happen? They save the nation! Kaboom! They flipped the fuse! And I can't believe it! Triple Jabruzi! And that's gonna be the game! And Samsung White are the 2014 World Champions!
Well, that seems pretty exciting. I always wanted to go there when I saw that clip. 60,000 people turned up just to watch two people play video games in front of them in, where was it? Berlin's Mercedes-Benz Arena. In fact, I think it was about a month long, the competition, it was viewed by 36 million people and saw 360 million hours of live esports viewing during that time. 360 million hours. Now, how could we leverage this way of learning more in the workplace? I was thinking about this because I was going to sit here. And I think a simple example would be that you could increase the use of job shadowing in your organization. Yeah, people learn from watching other people's mistakes as well as from watching the best, so you could have them job shadow anyone. Doesn't matter if they're good or not. Yeah. And that would actually probably enhance a culture of safe critiquing and feedback. Watchers could also rate and review the person that they're shadowing and give some feedback to that person too. Maybe we could take it a stage further. Have a competition where everyone in your service center gets to watch two of your customer service teams compete intensely against each other over a 2-hour period. This could lead to an ongoing league being formed, perhaps, for longer-term learning. How close do you think we could get it to being esports? Yeah? Could we set these sessions up so that staff could tune in live online from anywhere in the world, watch one of your best or someone from any branch giving a presentation, maybe trying to close and sale? In fact, I reckon with a bit of planning, you could broadcast or watch something for almost any job role. From a couple of hours watching a marketer build the latest newsletter, to watching the process someone on the IT help desk goes through on a support call, hopefully when they're more informative than just saying, have you tried turning it off and on again? Okay. Our final key to fun is serious fun, also known as meaningful fun. And this is where the outcome is so motivating that anything you do towards achieving it is more motivating automatically because of that. So the sort of examples we'd have are personal goals like weight loss, quitting smoking, that sort of thing, or bigger picture stuff like saving the world through recycling or trying to eradicate disease or poverty. Anything towards those, even though it might not be fun itself, is more motivating and fun because of the end goal. And to explain what I mean, have you heard about the game Fold It? Anyone? Oh, super, an audience of gamification people. They all go, yeah, I've heard that one. So this was a bunch of AIDS researchers in Washington, D.C., who've been trying to solve a protein folding issue for 12 years when they created a game for people to play online to try and solve that issue. Now, because of the meaningful objective, they found it very easy to get quite a few thousand people to play the game. And in spite of it not being all that great to look at or indeed play. And they solved the problem within 10 days. So they used gamification and meaningful purpose to motivate thousands of people and get the answer. So they did gamification of crowdsourcing, really. Since then, many others have got in on the act. You can now play games such as Play to Cure and Genes in Space. Both of those are from Cancer Research UK. So if you want to help, have a quick play. Yeah. Next up, we have O-Power. This is a company that adds some extra information to your electricity or gas bill. So as well as showing you how much power you've used, I like this, it shows you how much your neighbors have used. Yeah. And in fact, it's been in use in the US for quite a while now, for a few years, and with millions of users. And they've shown an average reduction in power usage across the board of 2% every year, year on year, which doesn't sound that much. But actually, across millions of users, that's an immense positive impact on the environment. It's now here in the UK, actually. E.ON are using this O-Power software. And I think it's called their Saving Energy Toolkit, if you want to have a look at it. Our final serious fun example is free rice. Now, I like this. It has two gamified objectives. Has anyone heard of free rice? Yeah? Oh, couple. Excellent. Okay. Now, the first is actually to provide education for everyone for free. And the second is to feed the hungry and the needy. And it combines these by getting you to answer questions such as to the meaning of words and donating 10 grains of rice each time you get an answer right. It's sponsored by different companies each day. They pay for the rice. That's the website it's sponsored. Now, 10 grains doesn't sound like that much rice, really. But actually, since they started this, they've managed to feed over 10 million people. In fact, I'm going to ask you to play it now, on your phones or tablets. You go to freerice.org or freerice.com and answer, well, donate 200 grains of rice, and then I want your attention back, because you will get addicted to it. Yeah? Come on. This is an interactive session. If you're not going to play it, you can watch me pretend to play it on the screen. Okay, I reckon you've all who are going to do it have done it, and the rest of you are just carrying on because it's fun. I'm really, I think I feel better for knowing that we've probably just donated a few thousand grains of rice between us. Thanks. Cheers me up. Did you get a nice altruistic buzz from playing it? Yeah. In fact, next time you're tempted to play solitaire at work, have a think about playing a serious game, maybe doing some good at the same time instead. I think that would be useful. Now I'm going to take you through a couple of examples of gamification in use that I think would be really relevant to you in the world of learning. And my first example is, what about turning your actual learning requirement completely into a game? Okay? So it's just bordering edge of serious games rather than gamification. And this is an example of a mobile game called Bounden, choreographed by the Dutch National Ballet. This game aims to get you to dance together and learn ballet. In fact, you have to have 2 players to play it. Now, I did think about getting you to play that game. Well, I thought there might be some injuries and I'd be liable for them, so free rice seemed a bit safer. Okay. Now, perhaps before you even start the learning process, you want to make sure you've got the right participants or players. Now there's a scalable and gamified way to do this as well. I recently recruited a new intern for my business. I had a few strong candidates based on their CVs and how they interviewed. I couldn't really decide between them, so I got them to play a game that would be psychometrically testing them at the same time as playing the game. Now, the idea behind this is that you get so into playing the game that you can't game the game like you would game a psychometric test, potentially. Say anyone would do that. So that you should end up with more accurate results about the candidates. Throughout the game, it's testing you on how you handle obstacles, setbacks, and how you innovate and more. It's a pretty tricky game, actually. Only about 20% of players can finish the second level within the 20-minute time limit. In fact, what I also liked about it is not only do you get the results about the candidate, but if you play it or get your staff or the team members to play it, then the system will come back and try and tell you which is the best match to help you try and build a high-performance team. So of my candidates, only one managed to finish the game and win. I can tell you I didn't win the game when I played it. I'm quite competitive. Another 5 seconds, I'd have been there. The second best candidate's results were that he was a good all-rounder in lots of different skill sets, but only a 20% match for joining the team. Whereas the best candidate's results came back as a 40% match. So I drilled down and had a look. And he basically had 10 out of 10 scores in areas where I was really weak. So it was filling in the gaps. So he got hired to fill in the gaps where I'm weaker. And to be honest, 4 months in, it looks like it was a pretty inspired choice. And I think that's probably the first data-driven choice I've ever made running my business in 15 years. The rest has been gut feel, mostly. Okay. In fact, I'm going to show you the first level of this game now. It's called Virtuoso from a company called Gravitalent. They were working on it with IBM. Hopefully you can see that. This is the first level. Now that's basically the training level. But I find it a very interesting game design because it's been designed to work well across cultures. It's got no written tests, almost no text, and no culture-dependent context needed to understand it and actually play it. In fact, that first level is a very good example of onboarding. They realized early in the video games industry that generally there wouldn't be someone standing next to you telling you how to play the game and training you. So the game has to train you how to do it. And they do that through a process called onboarding, highlighting key options to press, guides, explaining the reasons behind choices, limiting the number of options and limiting the pace at which you achieve things. The second level of that game is far, far, far more difficult. But you've got all the concepts you need from that brief little onboarding that takes a couple of minutes, really. So with a modern game, in the first level, you should only have 1 or 2 concepts to learn. Then in the second level, maybe speed it up a little bit, then add another concept, then speed it up again. And pretty soon, after 2 or 3 hours, you've got maybe 30 or 40 bits of data flying at you, it's moving really fast, and you're enjoying it. How often does that happen in work systems? Not very often. Okay. Oh yeah. Here's an example I like from the world of learning technologies. Has anyone heard of the company Competia? It's a Spanish company, and they've got a competitive quiz app product called RetaMe, which basically translates to Challenge Me in English. They use it for kickoff, sales events, product launches, and cross-selling training. They've got over 100 customers, more than 35,000 users, and have had over 8 million questions answered during the app, throughout the app, and those different users. So they've got some really interesting stats, which luckily they shared. Okay. So, and generally one of these competitive quiz launches will last for about 5 days. Okay, the game will be available for 5 days. The average knowledge increase in players across all players over a 5-day period is about 30%. Pretty good for just a quiz. 80% of the players end up playing it outside of work hours. They're not asked to. They just end up doing that. In fact, the most commonly played time is between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Okay? Followed by lunchtime, followed by breakfast time. In fact, if you see the stats, you can see that in Spain, lunchtime is 3 o'clock. There's generally about 150 questions set up in one of these quizzes. It's like their minimum level they like. But on average, every player will answer 800 questions. So they've covered all the questions 5 times. Their world record for a player in the 5-day period, and this happened in October, it's just happened, is someone answered 10,521 questions. That's how they got into it. There was only 150, so they covered the same ones a lot of times. They get into it. Okay. Storytelling and epic themes are something that games do well as well, and are both areas that can really help us engage with learning. For inspiration, I've got a marketing-related short video, but I think it shows how much fun can be had by inserting unsuspecting players into a story. can't wait to try something like that in my university with my students. Something like that. I haven't worked out how to get the budget for it yet. But. Okay, at the start of my talk, I mentioned my panicking client. Now, this was a young startup. This is quite a salesy bit, but that was my background in CRMs. It was a young startup selling predominantly through telesales. We set them up originally with a gamified CRM just to foster user adoption of the system, and the onboarding side of things. But soon after we started working with them, they got taken over and given the staggering task by the new owners of tripling their sales figures with no increase in staffing levels and no extra budget. So the sales manager asked us to devise some redeemable rewards to add into their system, into their gamification system, to help them reach these new targets. So there was no budget for monetary rewards. And indeed, at this organization, the staff has a fixed wage and no commission element or bonus scheme. Okay. Just to give you a bit of background, the sales team are split by geographic area. Each area has a senior sales advisor. They do the more complex queries and perhaps even go and visit the clients. And they're supported by telesales staff who sell direct, but also have to provide them with those leads as well. So the system we devised examined every element of the customer contact and sales process so that each team member, through the use of a point system behind the scenes, is tracked. And the system tracks every lead added, phone call recorded, task followed up on, email sent, meeting arranged and attended, as well as the number and type of sales that are closed. There are different levels of points attached and allocated to each type of activity, but the idea is that sales won't be closed without attention to every level of the sales funnel and the sales activities. So with this level of detailed tracking, we were hoping to reward staff, particularly letting individuals play to their strengths, and hoping that that would lead to the team as a whole hitting their sales targets. Then we had to look for some rewards that would motivate the staff but wouldn't cost anything. No challenge there then. We did some staff focus groups, and they indicated 3 main types of reward that would generally motivate them. Now, money's nearly always the first thing they ask for, so we always start our focus groups by saying money's not an option. That won't be one of the rewards in the system. Apart from anything else, we know from extrinsic research that it's a terrible motivator for that sort of thing. Okay, so the 3 types of reward that come back are generally personal experiences and vouchers. So things like chocolates, food treats, days out at the races, holidays and trips abroad. Team-based rewards and activities, so mostly veering towards team socials, more away days, but with some requests for food and drink to be brought into the office, and sometimes we even get asked for enhancements to be made to the office environment. People are quite keen, quite often, on where they work. And the third section is additional time off work. So from finishing work an hour early, or having an extended lunch break, to perhaps even having a whole extra day off. Now, we kept the reward selection simple, partly so we could get it up and running quickly, partly because there was no budget. So we launched the reward scheme by restricting it to rewards based on time only. Okay, and we had a very simple 5 rewards. Staff could cash in their points or coins in the system for either half an hour off work, 1 hour, 2 hours, half a day, or a whole day off work. With a simple rule that the maximum hourly reward you could take was 1 a day, and the maximum daily reward was 1 a week, in the hope that the office would always be manned and staffed, so that any incoming inquiries could be looked after. Now, I've previously used time off rewards in our own CRM internally, but this client didn't want to risk giving away too much time off too easily, so we tripled the cost compared to what I'd used in my own system, making it much harder to achieve. So we expected it to take at least 3 months for the first person to achieve a day off, and that assumed they weren't cashing in coins along the way for an hour off here and there, which was my experience in my business. So we ran a very short launch briefing to drum up some interest and excitement in the staff about the new rewards. In fact, it was literally about an hour, that launch briefing, and then let them get on with it. Then I had to wait patiently. But when I checked in, the answer was target smashed. It was a really great success. They've hit the triple targets every month for 4 months since it's gone live. And a surprise for me was that the first whole day off was actually earned and cashed in within just 6 weeks. Every member of staff involved has since earned enough coins for a whole day off. Most have cashed them in, although some are waiting for a day they really want to use it. I suspect that's a hangover day. February the 2nd for those who had January off, something like that. Okay. In fact, the client's panic was due to the fact that the system was hitting those targets, obviously a good thing in itself, But he had this vision of the sales directors coming down to the office to see why they were doing so well and there being no one there. That's why he called me. It shouldn't be too bad, though, because obviously it's a game, so the points get harder and harder to achieve. It gets harder to go up levels, which give you coins and things like that. So the earning rate goes down over time. And in fact, now they actually have to inject special rewards occasionally to up the ante. More time off, generally. Now, following the success of that client, I delved into the game mechanics stats from a range of different companies, different sizes, different industries, but all using this same gamified CRM system, all in the UK. That system's called CRM.me. The types of mechanics, game mechanics they use are pretty standard stuff, actually. It's badges, points, levels, some virtual goods, the idea of collections that goes along with those virtual goods, and a virtual currency, which can sometimes be redeemed for rewards like the time off. But not every company has that set up. Okay? And here we've got the stats from the top 10 CRM.me users in the UK. And I've ranked them by average points earned by month. And the interesting thing about doing this was actually that I found anyone with a score of above around 10,000 points a month was a highly engaged user of the system. They used it a lot and enjoyed it. Anyone with a score above 5,000 points a month was basically what I'd call your traditional CRM user. They knew how to use it, they were using it for their work. That sort of thing. Anyone under that was either part-time and not using it as the main part of their process, or really needed looking at in how they were using the system. Okay. Here we can see that Jane, our top user, only 4 months into her job, in fact that parallels, she joined and started using the CRM at the same time, but she's doing a lot of work and is engaged by all the main game mechanics we're using, and her manager should be very happy with her. In fact, she does indeed work at the one I was just talking about. But they're cashing in coins for time off. Okay. Now, I like this example, because our number 2 user here is a director of a business, and it's not often you can get them to play the game, whatever it is, and he's a workaholic. In fact, if anything, he says the gamification features sometimes get in his way, and he thinks about turning them off. Okay. Although he still engages with them fairly often. You don't get that many coins without clicking on a few when they pop up in this particular system. Okay. But why doesn't he turn off the gamification features? Well, number 4 on the list, Jeanette works for him. Okay? And because of his example in using the game, she's extra motivated to use it. In fact, in this top 10, she's the only part-time worker, and she's still managed to make it into the top 10. I haven't averaged it out because she's part-time or anything. Simon says that Jeanette is worth 1.2 Jeanettes to him because of the gamification and how they use it. Okay. Now, Laura here, she has the most badges. Now, in this system, you can only achieve and get badges by using lots and lots of different features within the system. Okay? So she's the person in that particular company that you go to for any guidance or help on using the system. She's tried everything in there. Okay? In fact, she was offered a promotion the day I sent these stats to her boss. My favourite stat here, Jen works at a company. She's got the most coins in the whole list in the whole of the UK. She works at a company where they don't even have a reward system for cashing those in. She collects them just because they're fun to collect. Aesthetically, they're a bit of a black hat gamification feature. They spin, the coins spin, and then there's a little ka-chink sound when you collect them. It's just good fun. I've seen my own staff pause, turn up their speakers, and then click these to collect them, and then carry on with their work. And you can see everyone else go, I want one. Okay, which is really cool. So she engages highly, even though there's no actual extrinsic reward after that as well. In fact, I want the ka-ching. That's the sound it makes. Okay. So in terms of the rewards, we've worked with quite a few different cultures and player ages, and I found that the 4 keys to fun we started talking about at the beginning actually work and are effective across all of them. Where we see the most differences is in the type of extrinsic rewards that we might use in the gamification systems. So in the UK, we find that time off is by far the most powerful motivator. In the US, it tends to be experiences such as a holiday, along with the time off to enjoy the experience. Okay? Whereas in the Far East and countries like Vietnam, it's still very much about monetary rewards. They're all about catching up with the rest of the world really quickly, and psychologically and culturally, that's what I want to do. In fact, if you give them a chance to gamble the money for even more, then that's going to be even more motivating to them. what's new that's coming along in gamification? Well, I think it's heading towards the use of big data combined with sort of game-style head-up displays, so displaying all that data that's coming at you. And it's going to help train people to do two things, to master their techniques and also improve the speed and accuracy of what they do. So, and particularly in faster and better decision-making. So one thing games do really well is highlight data to you only when a decision needs to be made. Games tend not to bombard you with reports, yeah? But they highlight when you've got resources to use, or a unit to give orders to, or a city in peril. In other words, you don't need to search for tasks. They come at you naturally, and generally in the right priority order. And this means you make more and faster decisions. Those top game players in esports that we were looking at earlier have been shown to make over 100 decisions a minute while they're playing. Okay, and we can do that in this sort of thing. Here's a simple example of how this might work in sales. Many of our clients insist on having a field in the CRM for the last activity date with a client or a prospect, i.e. the last time they were called, emailed, or had a meeting. And then they ask for a report on that, perhaps showing all those where there hasn't been an activity in over 3 months. Now that sounds like a really sensible report. But after the first time, they never tend to get run, those reports. If they do get run, no one does anything with them. So a proactive game-like system would just highlight to the salesperson that you're about to lose that hard-earned lead. Yeah? And recommend you do something about it. Now, gamification is about learning from what works really well and motivates us in games. And the other element of games I've been looking at recently that I'm particularly interested in is games really want you to play them again and again. Yeah? So they want to keep playing. So as well as being fun in the first place, it's got to be fun enough to keep trying. And how do they do that? How do they get you to play it over and over again? They get you to play it differently every time. So often by giving you different resources or advantages. It keeps the game feeling fresh. Plus, it's a great way to learn how best to play the game. I reckon it's not until you play a game many different ways that you truly master it. Okay, so one of my favorite recent games here is Sid Meier's Starships. It's a turn-based strategy game and allows for quite a few different tactics to be used during the game, but also some different strategies. And every time you log on to play it, it gives you these different choices. So you can choose the style you're going to play, like what sort of technology development program you're going to go on, what sort of advantages you want to start with. Do you want an extra starship or a 10% boost to staff morale? You can choose how long you're going to be playing for, partly by choosing the map size. If you choose an epic one, it's going to take you hours. Or sometimes you might just want to squeeze in an hour-long game on medium mode once you're good at it. You can choose how challenging you want it to be, partly through the difficulty level, but also by how many opponents you have. And you can choose how you want to win. Yeah? When you just start playing the game, there's about 6 or 7 different ways you can win. But actually, you want to learn. And one of the ways to do that is to force yourself to try and win a particular way. So you can try and win through galactic domination, through building the largest population, most advanced science and technology, building the most wonders of the galaxy, or simply just go for it and see how fast you can win. Okay. Now, I believe we can use this sort of scenario-based or constraints-based settings to gamify real day-to-day business processes. So that means that the training and learning would be built into the job rather than as separate training. So here's how it could be used in that sales situation. When your salesperson logs onto their CRM, they're going to give them some choices that day. Maybe choose different marketing campaigns to work with, different sales scripts to use, working without email for a day, working without the phone for a day, yeah? Only being able to use a particular social media platform, choosing what size of company to target. All of those, as they play them, they're going to get an understanding, a real in-depth understanding of what works and what doesn't work, and be able to guarantee a sale eventually. It's important to understand, by the way, as an aside, that people should volunteer to play these games. So you should have a button that says, just let me do it normally. And maybe 70 to 80% of people will play the game, and the rest will just get on with their jobs. But once they're volunteered, they're far more motivated to do it. So I think using this, for instance, in the CRM would help staff master selling, really master it, because they're effectively split testing all the different ways and approaches to the sales process. Pretty soon they're going to know their own strengths and what they're best at as well, and they'll know how to game the system. Now, normally we don't want people to game the system, but in this case we do. Gaming the system means they'll be able to guarantee themselves a win. So they've got a target to hit by the end of the month. They go, well, today I know I'm going to have to just get on the phones or just sit on Twitter or whatever it is that worked previously and guarantee themselves that sale. Plus, when the salesperson gets bored, they can just set themselves a challenge to play a different way. Yeah? Or attack a new target market, perhaps. And I think that's going to help prevent the burnout of salespeople, which is an issue in sales. And the top salespeople will stay with you for even longer. Now, this scenario or constraints-based approach could work for mastering many different types of role. Here's a picture of how a game dashboard might look for someone logging on to run their business each day. Okay? They can choose the style of business approach, choose their leadership style, their attitude for the day or the week, each of which comes with different advantages and disadvantages. Yeah? Choose what size of company they're trying to target, what their win state is. Now, to be honest, I want you to spend a couple of minutes just thinking about what this dashboard would look like for you or for your role. Yeah? Or for a role you've got to provide some e-learning for, maybe. Yeah? In fact, why don't you discuss it in pairs? Yeah? First of all, decide what role, and then roughly what you think the key changes you'd make each day, how you would like to play each day differently might be. Yeah? Let's have your attention back. I'm pleased that sounds like it causes a bit of discussion. Now, who's willing to share a role they were talking about that they think this could, we got, yeah, cool.
So let me come over with the microphone.
What was the role, and maybe what are some of the choices you think of coming up with?
So we were having a discussion about management, for example, and actually using this probably not as an IT platform, maybe a deck of cards, and you put lots of things in terms of what you value as a manager. So one of them may be about engaging other colleagues in terms of solutions, and you get them to pick a card, and you say, well, you can't do that today. And you get them to do their own work. They'll be competitive compared to how they perform normally, and by the end of the conversation, they'll probably recognize the value of that conversation in a way that if you say to them you need to engage others, they probably won't tell. So it's that competition against how they know they can perform and how that handicap has actually stopped them doing the whole process, and suddenly they value it in a way that you couldn't teach through any other well, you can teach it through other ways, get the conversation, but it just sounds like quite a nice experiential way of doing it.
I think you've really cottoned on to one of the key bits about it, which is if you take a crutch away that someone normally uses, that's one of the best learning experiences. Yeah? What else have we got? Anyone else willing to say? Yeah, with some good discussions. What role did anyone have a role they thought would be really difficult to apply this to? Yeah, did you get stuck?
We didn't particularly talk about which role it would be good for or not good for. I was thinking about this in the context of what you said earlier of how it would be great to fit something into someone's workflow. So it's like gaming isn't separate, it's part of what you do. And I was wondering how you would see this fitting into someone's workflow.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would see this sort of dashboard, for instance, in the CRM situation. I would log in, and instead of the first screen being my list of things to do, it would be how do I want to play today? And then it would put the constraints into place so the email wouldn't work, or at least, at the very least, it would just tell you not to use email that day. Yeah, that's all right. And that's probably the hardest bit to visualize to begin with for any particular role. But that's cool. Anything else? Any other roles?
I suppose it's kind of, maybe it's if we can do the role for L&D, so you can have all the different types of learners on there and then see how best to kind of interact with them and things. But who would build that for us, really?
That's a great idea. Yeah. Or if anyone attended the talk yesterday that said learning styles don't really exist, you could try that out. Just remove visual or something. That'd be might not work. What did I do there? That's cool. Now, actually, that was it. We've covered a lot this afternoon. I'd like you to think about ways to use gamification to enhance learning. I'm particularly interested in hearing more ideas about how you would add scenario-based games into day-to-day processes, and also ideas on how to use that esports and how close we could get to esports in learning. Yeah? So your mission in the future is to embed some learning within core business processes. I'm going to say thanks very much for listening, and I think I've got time for some questions as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Pete. So we do have about 7 minutes for questions. I know Pete covered a lot, so does anyone have any kind of burning questions, or do we just need a minute to kind of
We've got one over here.
process? Perfect.
So do you think it's possible that games like League of Legends can be actually used in a company to kind of improve team efforts? So if a new team for a project comes together, the first thing they have to do is team up, play League of Legends as a team to kind of develop their spirit.
That's an interesting question. That wasn't kind of what I was aiming at, but there is an example of that. At IBM, one of the recruiters was tasked to find the next lot of leaders. And actually what they did was go and find out who within IBM led guilds in the World of Warcraft, because they bring together lots of people with different skill sets. In fact, they have to have different skill sets in order to be able to achieve the missions in World of Warcraft. So they're naturally good leaders. And they were often quite surprising results. Some of the biggest guilds in World of Warcraft were led by 12-year-olds with 30 or 40 grown men and women as part of the guild. It doesn't really apply. It's all about the skills that are in it. Apart from that, I think you're just looking for an excuse to play League of Legends at work. But
I think it would be quite interesting actually to get then like a manager who used to have the power to do decisions and put him into a role like a supporter who is not supposed to do decisions, and put someone who is more or less like a quiet person into the role of the team lead in that moment. So to kind of develop skills.
Yeah. In fact, that makes a lot of sense. The whole area of role play is a good thing that we use a lot in gamification as well, because it unlocks people's different skill sets and learning. You know, quite a high percentage of World of Warcraft players might have male character names, but they're actually women playing them. They're exploring and playing in a different way. It's one of the reasons it's actually a really popular game in both sexes. So you did some really good learning by doing that. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Any more questions? So I've got a question while other people maybe think. Going back to your gamified CRM research, were there any game mechanics that didn't work?
Good question. Did I only talk about all the positives? Yeah, actually, there was one really big surprise to me. That gamified CRM has quite a big social element, a bit like Yammer built into it. So there's a couple of different feeds, one sort of social feed, the Yammer Facebook style, and one which is an activity feed to make people feel more included in it. And I thought that would be one of the really motivating things about it. But I think people used it for about 2 weeks and then it died away. And in fact, that was across the board in all the different companies. So I think it's partly a design element, but it's also, it has to fit a need within that particular process. And I don't think there was one there, or it wasn't designed in right. If there was a need, it would probably be about creating collaborative sales teams. And that CRM wasn't really designed to do that at that time. But yeah, good question.
Thank you.
What else didn't work? I'm sure there was some other stuff in there that didn't work. Badges didn't get used all that much.
Do you always build a help button into your games? Because I'm playing The Room now, and I hate it. I'm trying to throw away my phone because I hate the game and I can't find any help. Or I have to go to many tutorials on YouTube and I don't want it. I want to just click and get a first tip. And then, do you do that in your games too? Because I tried it for our students, but do you do it for professionals too?
Okay, so I would tend to work on that in terms of the onboarding and getting people on board the game. That's where the tips and guides would mostly be. And then actually I would generally recommend people go to YouTube and the whole esports thing, the bit you didn't want to do, because that's where most people will engage with it and work with it. So sort of aiming for the majority. Yeah, good question. We have another question. Yeah.
Hi. So you talked a lot about kind of using this in environments where people perhaps weren't otherwise motivated by their work, to kind of motivate them. Do you think gamification only works in an environment where people don't already deeply care about what they're doing? Do you think you need to use gamification to add meaning?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I would say It's far easier to add gamification where there's already some meaning. Some of the best clients I've worked with, the charities, where everything they do is already meaningful. So you only have to add the extra 3 types of fun to make it even more successful. One of the clients on there, they provide business support and referral and look after their customers. That's one of the things they do. In fact, they point them at free advice and services. So it's they do it because they want to help businesses. So they're already doing that. And then their targets got tripled anyway because they got taken over by a numbers-based Quango to try and achieve even more. So they were already motivated, but then they had this completely new change. I guess that was a change management thing that rewards thing was all about. Also, it worked well because the manager could sign off on time off, and it didn't have to run by the directors. That was the other reason he was scared if they came down and found there was no one there. They'd be like, what, you've been giving them time off? Cool.
Any more questions?
I know I threw lots of different concepts at you.
Great. So just before we go, if we just say a final thanks to Pete for a great presentation.
Thank you.